In Wisconsin, we're confronted by the spectacle of Republican Governor Scott Walker taking over a state with a budget surplus, pushing through the Republican-controlled legislature $140 million in tax giveaways to his business funders, and then declaring that his state was $137 million in debt. Now he's saying 2 years out he's going to be over $3 billion in debt. That was $137 million. Presumably because of his tax cuts to his business buddies. To pay that debt, he proposed state workers take a huge pay cut. They'd already given up over $100 million, and they're actually willing to sit down and negotiate with him, and they've already said in advance, fine, we'll give you everything you want. Pay, pensions, all of it. We just want the right to have our union and to have collective bargaining, which means we get to negotiate with you or with, whoever the local group is. But then out came the knife in the back. Walker and the Republicans, as part of a concerted, well-funded, nationwide effort, and I'm going to go into this in considerable detail later in the program. Lee Fong's going to be with us, the Center for American Progress. Got some amazing statistics and stories and information here as we go through these 3 hours. This is a well-funded nationwide effort to destroy public employee unions, frankly, all unions, but now the strongest left are public employee unions, so they're going after them. Walker and the Republicans wrote a law that would forbid state employees their rights to collectively bargain. Collectively bargain means they all get together, they vote on a leader, they vote on a position, that person goes into the room, negotiates with the state, comes back out, says, okay, here's what we've worked out, everybody gets to vote on it, to negotiate with their employers. Things like employee safety conditions, vacations, pensions, pretty much everything else except pay. Now, doing away with collective bargaining would totally neuter the union. There's no reason to have a union, which is why Scott Walker wants it done that way. He even wrote into the bill that the state would stop deducting union dues from union members' paychecks so they'd have to write individual paychecks, creating bookkeeping havoc for union households. Similar bills are being proposed in Ohio and Indiana. It's just a matter of time before they hit Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and other Republican-controlled states. This is not about budgets, deficits, pensions, or pay. It's not even really about the right of unions to negotiate with employers like the state of Wisconsin. At the end of the day, this is about single-party rule. You see, the Republicans have this fantasy. They want to be the only ones in charge. In exchange for this power, they'll do whatever their billionaire and multinational, corporate sponsors want, regardless of its impact on America. We're already seeing this with the changes since the Reagan administration and revolution in our trade policies, our labor policies, and the war on public education. They're trying to turn America into a banana republic, a nation of serfs, of peons, the predictable result of trickle-down economics, and a terrified working poor like Dickens wrote about Bob Cratchit in A Christmas Carol in 1843. Back, by the way, when there were still maximum wage laws, you couldn't pay a person over a certain amount for many jobs. Why? To keep the working poor and quiet. So why do modern conservatives do this? Because they think it's the best thing for America. Because they believe democracy is fundamentally dangerous. They call it mob rule. Many of them on this program have shared that with you. And they think society should be run by a noble elite in order for it to run best. Who are the people that God wants to run? Well, obviously the rich. They're blessed by God, right? Look to their founding literature and philosophers. In 1951, Russell Kirk wrote a book called The Conservative Mind. It was then and is to this day the Bible of modern conservatism, often quoted extensively by people like the late William F. Buckley Jr., Barry Goldwater, all the way up to the modern Tea Party. The first chapter of his book, The Conservative Mind, was about Sir Edmund Burke, the British conservative thinker, who got in such an argument with Thomas Paine in the late 1700s that Paine wrote an entire book called The Rights of Man as a rebuttal to Burke. Burke did not believe in democracy. He thought only the rich and powerful should be allowed to vote. He said it does me no harm if a man is allowed to engage in a profession as servile as hairdresser or candlemaker, but it does society considerable violence if such a person should be allowed to participate in politics. The poor shouldn't be able to vote or even to run for public office. To allow such thing, Burke said, is to be at war with nature. Now, Burke was Russell Kirk's hero, and Kirk and his book, The Conservative Mind, was Goldwater and Reagan's hero and continues today to inspire the funders of the Tea Party. When I was working in Russia some years ago, A friend in Kaliningrad told me a perhaps apocryphal story about Nikita Khrushchev, who, following Stalin's death, gave a speech to the Politburo denouncing Stalin's policies. He's putting down Stalin. A few minutes into Khrushchev's anti-Stalin diatribe, somebody shouted, "Why didn't you challenge him then the way you are now?" Room fell silent. The room fell silent as Khrushchev looked around the room and said, "Who said that?" The room was silent. He swept. He looks around the room with a more angry glare. "Who said that?" he said in a reasonable voice. Silence. Leaning forward, Khrushchev demanded, "Who said that?" Silence. Pounding his fist on the podium to accent each word, he screamed, "Who said that?" Still no answer. Finally, after a long and strained silence, the politicians in the room, fearful to even cough, the corner of Khrushchev's mouth lifted in a smile. "Now you know," he said with a chuckle, "why I did not speak up against Stalin when I sat where you now sit. When I said that the Republican war on organized labor is about creating single-party rule, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Stop people from voting, at least those most likely to vote Democratic, as Paul Weyrich told a group of Republican Christian activists a generation ago.
Now, many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome, good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
This is the guy who helped make Ronald Reagan president. Stop people from organizing. Become the last large group that can turn out Democratic voters. Because the last large group that can turn out Democratic voters, both with money and with shoe leather, going door to door. It's organized labor. If you can block the poor and urban and old from voting, which they did by destroying Acorn, and destroy the last organization that can turn out Democratic voters, the unions, then you can have single-party rule. The Republicans are trying to invent a single-party nation so they can remake America in their idea of paradise. A paradise where hairdressers and candle makers have no say in governing. And the noble rich make all the decisions. Now that's what's at stake. What's at stake here is, frankly, the future of democracy in America. What's at stake here is the future of a two-party system that at least has two parties.